Schadenfreude is defined as, quote, pleasure derived by someone from another person's misfortune. And damn if my Schadenfreude isn't rock hard. Never before have I been this pleased about a fictional character's death. Not even Joffrey's death in Game of Thrones brought me this much joy, and to be clear, I'm not happy that Kamala Khan is dead. I just find that funny. What's giving me constant joygasms is watching her so-called fans lose their minds over something everyone knows is going to be undone in a couple of months. For those of you who don't know, in upcoming Amazing Spider-Man number 26, Ms. Marvel will die. She's been a minor character in this series for a few issues. Her death got spoiled online. The first I saw of it were blurry pictures from the unreleased book, and this idiot whined about it saying, quote, it's not even the fact that Kamala will come back. The fact that they let the white man kill up the Muslim female character on a book that had nothing to do with her and use her for the controversial fridging trope to empower the male protagonist. Yes, let the hate flow through you. Fridging, for those of you who don't know, refers to when Green Lantern's girlfriend was killed and her body was stuffed into his refrigerator. Gail Simone, a comic book writer whose skill has faded with age, popularized the phrase in her blog post where she falsely claimed that female characters are killed just to progress male characters. In typical feminist fashion, she completely ignored that the same thing happens to male characters all the time. I broke down the flaws in her theory in a previous video, which I'll link to in the cards. Other feminists took up her claim and began using the phrase fridging to refer to any instance where a female character that they liked is killed. If they don't like the character, this fridging conveniently never applies. So that's what this idiot is doing here, except that's not at all what's happening. Kamala isn't being killed to make Peter look better or to make him suffer. Uncle Ben and Gwen Stacy's deaths pretty much have that covered. No, this is being done for synergy. The Marvels movie is coming out later this year, and the idea is probably to bring back Kamala just in time for the release date. Now, why kill her in a Spider-Man book instead of her own book? Well, because she doesn't have a book. See, despite all the complaints by these so-called fans made in the last few days about how much they love Kamala, they don't love her enough to buy her books. All of her series and miniseries barely sold, so they got canceled. She hasn't had a solo title in months, if not a year. The simple truth is that these people don't buy comic books. They don't like any of this stuff enough to spend money. They just like the idea that Kamala exists. Why? Because it's a virtue signal. They get to claim that they support minority and female characters, which makes them look good, which in turn makes them feel good. That's why so many of them said things like this, quote, hey, so what the fuck were Zeb Wells and Nick Lowe thinking by killing off Kamala Khan, the only mainline brown character Marvel has in a Spider-Man book? Shit feels racist and misogynistic. If you ever wonder why Tolkien characters like Kamala Khan and Miles Morales, who apparently isn't a mainline brown character, are such bland blank slates, that's why. The moment you do anything to them, it's suddenly racist or misogynistic. You can't develop an interesting character if nothing bad can ever happen to them. It's the conflict that causes them to develop the traits that make them interesting. The proof? Peter Parker. His suffering is what makes him the man and hero that he is. Kamala has nothing like this because the moment you hurt her or any of her supporting cast who isn't white, these people will flip out. But that's not the funny part. The funny part is all the irony. Let's start with the easy one. Kamala Khan might get retconned. Several people brought this up. These so-called fans are afraid that when Kamala gets resurrected, she'll be made a mutant, she's currently an Inhuman, and her powers will be changed to match the MCU version's powers. For some reason this bothers them, but ironically these people have no problem when this is done to other characters, particularly popular straight white male characters. If someone retconned Peter Parker to change his powers or his relationships or his sexuality, these people would love every second of it. But the moment it's done to a token character they pretend to like, now they have a problem. They act like Kamala's death is a big deal, but death hasn't meant much in American comics for decades, and definitely doesn't now with the Plant X-Men and their ability to resurrect anyone they want. Death is completely meaningless, especially when the audience knows it'll be undone in short order. And this is where you can see how many of these people are posers, because no actual comic book fan would ever think this was permanent. But some of these clowns are acting like it was. I mean, if only. The truly ironic part, though, is how these people are treating Amazing Spider-Man writer Zeb Wells. They're making open death threats against this dude, just flat out threatening violence against the man. These are the same people who whine about so-called toxic fandom, and here they are doing the same thing. Several of them are actually anti-Comicsgate, so you'd think they know better not to act like the people they hate, but no. They're doing the same thing they falsely accused Comicsgate of doing, and not one of them thinks it's wrong. Even better, I haven't seen a single comic book pro call these people out. Not one. Nick Lowe, the book's editor, asked people to wait until the book came out, but there's been none of that clapback the pros usually give to negative criticism. There's no way the pros don't know about the shitstorm directed at Wells, but they just have nothing to say. That's probably because these are their people. These are the fans they wanted. These are the uber-progressive, ultra-queer, non-binary, BIPOC, transgender, furry-kin, socialist wannabe grown-ass babies the pros claim was this untapped market who don't actually buy their books. They're scared of their own bitch-made audience, so they're letting Zeb get trashed in a way that they wouldn't tolerate if it were done by so-called Comicsgate. And as of the making of this video, I haven't seen any of the comic book sites who covered the leak mention the hate being directed at Wells. Comic book resources did acknowledge that Kamala's death was angering fans, but didn't mention any of the hate and the threats made against the man. And this is why I find it so funny, because it proves these people are chock-a-block full of shit. The world hasn't made a laxative strong enough to release the hypocrisy lodged in their asses. If it did, the first thing they'd point out is that this is the 75th time Marvel has spoiled one of its own events. It appears that Entertainment Weekly leaked the story, at least in the media, and for what? The response has been so negative that the people who actually do buy books ain't gonna buy this book. Why spoil the ending of your story? What kind of business sense does that make? What kind of story sense does that make? The impact of the moment has now been lost, and for what? These people are absolutely losing their minds, accusing Zeb Wells of racism and misogyny for killing off a fourth-grade token who is going to be brought back to life. Not a lick of evidence is presented to support either claim. They just accused the man of being a bigot and ran with it because he killed off an unlikable character who's going to be dead for 20 minutes. The claim that Zeb killed her off to distract from his apparently craptacular Spider-Man run is a more credible argument, and there's no real evidence of that either. So let this be a lesson to all those far-lefty comic book pros who think all toxic fans are right-wing chuds. Nah, son, more than a fair share is on your side, and these are the people you wanted. Karma is a bitch. Enjoy yourself. But what do I know? Well, I know this.
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did.